Well, welcome everybody to week 4 of our November online program for the alumni of the Sunshine Coast Health Center. Okay, and this month, what we've been doing is reflecting upon 2 years of the online program. What were the key themes that we kept bringing up? And so we've dealt with 3 already. So the fourth one is on this nature of suffering. Like, what do we do with this stuff? This is a very old thing. I don't know. You remember that poor guy Job in the Bible? All this crap's happening to him, and he can't figure it out. Well, that story is one of those truisms of what it means to be human. Like, all human beings suffer, and yes, bad things do happen to good people, and stuff happens all the time that's not pleasant. And every human being I've ever met has suffered. So what do you do with this problem? What do you do with this suffering? How do you make sense of it? Right? Well, one of the worst things you can do, probably the worst thing to do actually, is to believe that somehow living the good life means you don't suffer. Since everybody suffers, it's really a lousy tactic, right? Or having an attitude that, oh, suffering is bad and this is unacceptable. But since suffering is just a natural part of life, then all you're doing is setting yourself up for misery, right? Because when you do suffer, then what are you going to do, right? One of the keys about suffering is to get the right attitude towards it, okay? And some of our best thinkers in the past 2,500 years, and it's backed up by psychology too, have suggested maybe the way to approach suffering is not to avoid it, but to rise above it. Maybe that's the trick, right? And over 2 years of the online program, we've given many examples of this. One of my usual examples is the actor Christopher Reeve, right? Somehow this guy who had everything ends up in a wheelchair, and somehow in the space of a few years comes on national television and says, well, don't feel sorry for me, I'm living a good life. And you wonder, how could this be, right? Clearly the man is suffering, but somehow he's figured out a way of not to avoid the suffering, but to rise above it, right? One of the best ways of thinking about this is an idea that my mentor came up with, Dr. Paul Wong, psychologist, does a lot of research in the area. And this is his way of approaching life, okay? He says, okay, look, first thing you got to do is you have to accept reality no matter how bleak or dismal it may be. Okay, you got to find some acceptance of reality. Okay, that's first step. Second step, okay, now you've got this, my boss is a jerk, and I'm in debt, and the doctor told me I might have diabetes, and okay, so given that reality, okay, now what do you do? Okay, what makes your life worthwhile enough that you want to fight for it? Okay, what makes life worth living? Okay, so that's step 2. And along the way, you're going to need some courage, because you're going to run into some tough days. You're also going to need some faith that things will actually work out, because you don't get to dictate what the end result is going to be, right? You can only do your part, but the actual end, you got to have some faith that things in fact will work out, okay? And the end result of this, according to Dr. Wong, is that you will actually transcend suffering, okay? So you're not going to avoid it, but you're going to be able to rise above it. And that's a real trick, right? So many times I watch television, I see, if you have a headache, take this pill. If you, if I'm in pain because I broke my leg, I got to get to the doctor, get some pills, and I got to eliminate suffering. Oh, if my partner's giving me a rough time, well, she's got to change, right? Because she's making me suffer. Oh, if my parents are on my case, they got to change because they're making me suffer. And we got to eliminate all the suffering. Just eliminate. Get rid of it. Okay? And that way I will feel good. And things will be going on as they should. The way the universe intended the world to operate. But that's not very realistic, right? Because in life, all sorts of crap happens, right? And somehow you got to figure this out. Bad things do happen to good people. There is no question about it, right? So the idea of dealing with this mainly is an attitude, a way of rising above it. And so Dr. Wong's model is pretty good. Kathy uses this one in her family program, right? When she talks about this chaos the families are in and everything, and that perhaps if they have the right attitude, it can be a gift, because it's one of the ways we grow as human beings. And one of the things that the latest research, this is really fascinating, is they've done studies on addicts in recovery, and they're trying to like skip out past the suffering part, and they have found that in these cases, the people's long-term recovery suffers. Okay, when they don't address the suffering in their lives, if they don't go through the hell, if they don't go through the abyss, okay, if they don't figure all this out, then in fact their recovery will kind of suck. All of the people who are willing to face the abyss, all the dark tangle wreckage of the past, this, that, and the other thing, all the people who go in there and face it and overcome it and become stronger because of it, these people actually thrive in recovery. As weird as that may sound to you, actually the research is really quite fascinating. Yeah. So it's this idea of looking at, for example, hitting bottom, right? And we've talked about this in the alumni program, right? This idea of don't forget about hitting bottom or anything, like use it to your advantage, learn from it, become stronger, right? And in fact, this is how human beings operate in the world, is by suffering and then overcoming the suffering, and then they grow as a human being and things seem to work out. Anyway, that's week number 4, and next week we'll come back and we'll get another topic. See you then.